Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andrew Stott and I'm the Emperor of Stomaria. Today I want to issue a warning about Solacia and Bran-Howl. Now, this is a video that I really didn't want to have to make. In fact, a week or two ago, I even put up a post specifically so I wouldn't have to make a video about this. But unfortunately, when I put up a post, these posts very rarely reach as wide an audience as our videos do, and consequently, I am still getting messages about a particular issue which I want to discuss in this video. So, before I get started, I want to reiterate that Solacia and Bran-Howl are not member states of the Empire of Stomaria. They used to be, but they voluntarily left in December for some very petty, mundane reasons, which I'm not going to get into here. But the point stands, they are not member states of the Empire anymore. Now, I think the issue has stemmed from the fact that a lot of people obviously don't know this. A lot of people do know about Bran-Howl, and they do know about Solacia because of our publications about them. They associate them with Stomaria. And if they didn't catch the video, if they didn't catch the previous content in which they left the Empire of Stomaria, they may assume that they are still affiliated in some way with us. But they are not. Now, this wouldn't bother me in any shape or form. I would just politely correct them and they'd be on their way. But the issue is stemming from the fact that there is some confusion as to whether or not Stomaria is sanctioning a particular activity which Solacia and Bran-Howl are currently engaging in. And this is something that I don't want Stomaria, or myself personally, to be affiliated with in any way. And I want to discuss this in a bit more detail. I want to give a bit more of a backstory because it is incredibly important. So Bran-Howl actually became a member state of the Empire of Stomaria in November 2022. They remained a member state for about 5 weeks before they left. And before that, there was actually a very long joining process for two reasons. The first being that there were some issues regarding Bran-Howl properly developing itself to the point where we could actually publicise the fact that they became a member state, not least the issue concerning their flag. They hadn't designed their flag yet. But before that even, there was a lot of discussion as to whether or not Bran-Howl would actually become a member state of the Empire of Stomaria, because there was a lot of red flags, there was a lot of reluctance, and they really only just scraped by the application process. Because at the time, we did try to give people the benefit of the doubt. If we had reservations, then hopefully they would be sort of quashed as time went forward, but those reservations have not dissipated. They've only been exemplified further through the activities and actions that they're engaging in now. Now, the issue is that when they joined the Empire of Stomaria, they did so as an associated state. And they were an associated state because they had land. And that land was in Transnistria. So one of these issues, one of these red flags that we had, and this was picked up relatively early on, is this insistence from Bran-Howl that we should visit Transnistria, or that we should utilize Transnistria, we should move to Transnistria. And this was directed towards us and to Stomarian citizens and Waywidian citizens and Solacian citizens and then other member states of the Empire, because he wanted to build a community out there, which is, fine, fair enough. The land was cheap and the taxes were non-existent, and it was going to be a paradise for a lot of micronations to be able to come over there and utilize that land and build a real world community. And that was a sort of pitch that he sort of went over and over again. And the more we learned about Transnistria, the more reluctant we were to allow this kind of vocalization to take place. In fact, one of the conditions and criteria, and one of the statements that I actually made clear to Bran-Howl prior to the application, or prior to the acceptance rather, of Bran-Howl as a member state, is that I did not want to encourage citizens of Stomaria, of Wayward, of Solacia, or whatever else to move to Transnistria. And this is because Transnistria is internationally recognized as a part of Moldova, but it is considered by the Council of Europe to be under Russian military occupation. It is effectively an attempted breakaway state. Now, it's bad enough that this is the case, and it's bad enough that if you are in Transnistria and you criticize what the Russians deem peacekeeping forces, you can actually be imprisoned for up to 7 years. That's bad enough. But if you ever look at a map of Eastern Europe, you will see Moldova and Transnistria are bordered to Ukraine. And last year, it was reported in Russian state media by a general, I believe, that the intention was to build a land corridor across Ukraine to Transnistria. And this gets even worse when you consider the recent events in recent times, where the Moldovan government is suggesting that there is some kind of orchestrated Russian coup taking place in Moldova itself. And all of these sort of pieces of the puzzle, you can see that Transnistria is a very turbulent, or has the potential to be a very turbulent place to be. It's a region that's had a great deal of uncertainty around it for many, many decades now. And this has just been reinforced further and just propelled further by the fact that there is a war going on. There's coups or potential coups going on in Moldova, where Transnistria is actually considered a part of, and none of this sits right with me. And so you might ask yourself why exactly this is an issue. And the issue stems from the fact that Bran-Howl is not just based in Transnistria, but they are actually encouraging people to move there, to live with them, to establish a community there. And this is reinforced further by Solacia, who, from the safety of Hamburg in northern Germany, are also encouraging people to move to Transnistria. And I can't express just how reckless and just how ridiculous and how dangerous this kind of suggestion is. You are actually encouraging people to move to a part of the world, a region, which is under Russian military occupation, according to the Council of Europe, which is in a country that is currently suggesting that there is a Russian coup taking place, which is also adjacent to a country that is at war with Russia, with Russian armies invading Ukraine and trying to establish a land corridor to Transnistria. And you are out there, Bran-Howl and Solacia, saying, yeah, come to move to Transnistria because, the land is cheap. And just don't criticize Russia at all, and you should be all right. So you can pretty much guarantee that Bran-Howl, for instance, won't be vocalizing their opposition to the war in Ukraine, for instance, because that could lead him into a Transnistrian prison. Now, for obvious reasons, a lot of foreigners don't actually go to Transnistria, and I can't imagine why. But the point stands that it is a very dangerous part of the world. It is a region with a great deal of uncertainty around it, and I do not want people to move there because they think that this activity of recruiting people online through Reddit or Facebook or whatever else, don't want people to be misled into thinking that this has something to do with Stomaria, because it does not. I do not sanction this, I do not authorize this, I do not encourage this. The complete opposite is true. Now, if you want to join Solacia or Bran-Howl as a citizen, or follow them on YouTube, or join their Facebook page, or whatever else they got going on, I don't care. It's not of interest to me. But you should not move to Transnistria. 8 million or more Ukrainians have fled Ukraine, a war zone which is adjacent to Transnistria. Do not move to Transnistria. I mean, I can't reiterate just how ridiculous and how dangerous and how irresponsible these sorts of activities are. Going online and trying to encourage people to move to this kind of region of the world. It's really frustrating because it's bad enough that it's happening at all. But I do not want it tied to Stomaria. I don't want it tied to my name. So to reiterate, and for the half dozen or more people that have already contacted us about this, because of the advertisements or the messages or the comments that they've seen from Solacia and Bran-Howl, do not move to Transnistria. I do not sanction it. I do not encourage it. Do not move there. Now, I sort of covered everything, I think, that I want to cover. I think as a final point, and just to reiterate this even further, one of the final messages that Bran-Howl, the leader of Bran-Howl, actually sent me was to ask me not to use his name in the public space, because he was worried, and I quote, or I paraphrase, but I quote, he was not sure how the government of Transnistria would view it. Now, if you have Bran-Howl saying it's best not to use my name in a public space because the authorities of Transnistria might not like the idea of establishing a community or a micronation out there, I'm not sure how they would view it. And then for them to go out and encourage others to set up shop in his back garden, that's ridiculous, that's dangerous, and I just don't want anything to do with this. Because if anything happened, then I want my hands to be completely clean. If someone moved to Transnistria and the war came to Transnistria in some shape or form, I do not want people to be put in danger. I do not want blood on my hands. And that's really as much as I really want to talk about it, because that is ultimately what we're talking about here. This is why it is quite serious, and this is why I want to make this video, because it is a potential life or death situation to people that move into that area, to that region. It's just a powder keg of conflict, of coups, of protests, of annexations, and I just don't want anyone to move there because of the wrong assumption that Stomaria is in some way involved in this recruitment campaign that Solacia and Bran-Howl are engaged in. So that's all I want to say on that front. But if you did want to become a part of the Stomarian community, the actual Stomarian community, then please feel free to do so through our Patreon campaign, the link of which I shall leave in the description below as always. Otherwise, if you did enjoy this video, then please feel free to give it a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll catch you in the next one.